Today's guest is the founder of DadeTech LLC, a programmer, a software architect, an IT management consultant, and a technologist. He is also the co founder and CEO of HitSubscribe, a company specializing in tech content marketing. Over the years, he's authored several books, his most recent being Developer Hegemony: The Future of Labor, which explores the past, present, and future of the corporation and what this means for developers. Joining us to share his knowledge and expertise is Eric Dietrich, all the way from Michigan.
Hi, Kevin. It is
All
good
right.
to be here. Most of what I was doing with my code-based assessment practices is I got pretty good with static analysis tools of kind of turning code bases into data. And I would come in typically with organizational leadership. I'd be working with the C-suite or maybe a board of directors, and they would be wanting to make critical decisions about their application portfolio. So a particular code base. Do we retire this thing and sunset it? Do we try to evolve it? Do we scrap it and build something from scratch? Usually I was helping with decisions like that. Sometimes it was, do we have the right folks? Or are we trying to build with the right tech stack given our staff? So answering questions like that.
At Toro, we often get asked about migrating legacy systems. So legacy, large monolithic code bases in a legacy system, which typically underwrites a core function of the business. Did you, in your consulting days when you were doing these assessments, did you come across these legacy migrations and the challenges associated with migrating those?
Yeah, definitely. That was often central. I'm trying to think of the different situations. Quite often, I don't want to say always, but quite often when I was brought in, there was legacy code involved because in the practice that I had where people were making tough decisions, like people weren't calling me in to tell me how great everything was going and that, you know, their whole department loved the greenfield development they were doing. Mm-hmm. So it was usually, you know, we're dependent on this old mainframe system and this ecosystem of COBOL that grew up around it. And we're building these Java apps on top of it. And what do we do? So a pretty common situation was we've got this legacy app. How do we phase it out? Another kind of common situation is we started this forklift upgrade to try to, you know, wholesale replace the legacy system, and it's not going well. So that's where, you know, we'd be getting into the migration conversation is like, well, how can we maybe slice what we're doing in such a way that we're not building a replacement for this thing for 5 years and then trying to cut over, you know, with a flip of the switch, which I think everybody knows isn't going to go very well. So to answer the question, there was often a legacy migration at play, or there was often a legacy system that would be a growing organizational risk at play. Like literally, we can't find people who know how to maintain this code base. So there's, you know, a real kind of drop dead date on this coming in 5 or 10 years. It was usually things around that. So like the legacy system would typically be the elephant in the room. And a lot of the discussion is, what are we going to do about this?
How do you see APIs and microservices facilitating legacy system migration?
Generally speaking, with the enterprise clients, I would view an approach using microservices or using the term I would use a lot was like thin slicing anything that we'd do. And I would see those as like a fundamental piece of enablement to get away from a legacy system, because the failure pattern was always that, you know, the first thing that these enterprises would do is they'd bring in, you know, some huge app dev body shop or something to build an enormous piece of software. And then inevitably that attempt at a wholesale switch away from the legacy system just wouldn't go well. So then the conversation is, okay, we have this race, you know, where we're still kind of maintaining the legacy system and doing stuff to it while we're in parallel trying to perfect the new system. And they come to realize that there isn't going to be this magic switchover moment. So what do we do? And usually then the conversation is like, well, all right, what can we do that's, you know, slicing things thinly where we can get some kind of win? Like, how do we get one little piece of this legacy system routed over to the new system? And inevitably the answer there is some kind of like adapter or proxy type concept. So you put something in front of the legacy system, say in the form of a microservice, you have it just call through into the legacy system. Then once that's all structured well and going well, you put in some kind of feature flag where you can flip it over to start being serviced by the new system. And then if that goes poorly, you just flip it off and go back to where you started. And if it goes well, then, hey, you've migrated a little tiny slice away from the legacy system. And so based on that pattern, usually I was advising clients to build on that series of wins by, deconstructing and winning on small bets.
How successful are you finding enterprises in that transition?
What they had done is created a pocket of innovation within the enterprise where they removed a lot of the restrictions, brought about by having a lot of risk mitigation strategies like compliance departments and legal and all of the things that would kind of tie these groups' hands. They would create this little pocket that was sort of insulated from that stuff, and then they would have success in that pocket. But it was a lot tougher for them to kind of top to bottom across, 200,000 people or however many in the enterprise, kind of full on embrace that type of transformation.